a net saving by households. And this has an implication for Asian economies like us. Economies like Japan, Korea, China are far more vulnerable than we are, but we are also vulnerable to some extent, that the development in Asia has been very much dependent upon a high-spending American consumer. And when that consumer cuts back on consumption, at least for some few years to come, and increase the savings, we have to discover a new model of development. For example, Mr. Kamal Nath and the whole industry is concerned that our own exports have fallen a record minus 33% in March. Overall, during the year, it would have fallen by minus 20%. And one of the first priorities of the new government would be restore the export capability, not just depending on the US consumer. The IT industry has been diversifying European, Japanese markets, and now, unlike TCS, the other IT companies which have not developed the domestic market will give some more attention to this. There are three kinds of problems and three gradations of problems, which I talked about in April 9, therefore I need not go into it in detail. In the US, they were worried about a depression too, as serious as 1930s. If they had elected a Republican president, it is likely that they might have been in a depression. They were sensible, like our electorate, that over a period of time, they chose the right party, the right man, which believes in the role of the state as well as the market, and therefore the US government has been pursuing temporarily a more Keynesian interventionist policy, and that has helped to tame the crisis and turn around. Similarly, the UK government, at some point, they will denationalize. They are not there to own and run banks. They will sell their equity at a profit. The European economies were not so badly hit as the US. They are in a state of recession, which is much safer than inflation. Recessions normally run about 18 to 24 months, and there is an upturn. The question is whether a U-shaped upturn or a V-shaped upturn or a W-shaped upturn, meaning how strong is the recovery and how spread out in terms of time. Who would have thought that Dubai, which was riding the crest of development and investment, is now in a serious crisis, and many real estate projects have been cancelled, and existing buildings do not have tenants. Let me come now to the domestic situation in India. It was neither a depression, fear, nor a recession, nor the Japanese-type deflation. We have had a downturn, a relatively much milder, like China, the Chinese growth rate falling from 10 to 8%, our growth rate falling from 9 to 6%. So we have a slower rate of growth, but that matters for us because our base is lower, and every percentage point of GNP has deep implications for poverty reduction as well as job creation in the country. So one of the priorities of the new government will be to raise the growth rate back to that 8% plus trajectory. We have been greatly helped by this election. The domestic crisis, which looked very severe and led to the stock market falling, as you know, in January 2008 from 21,000, it came down to 8,000. It is a very steep fall of 140%. From that low, it is now recovered by a considerable 50-60%. Before the election, another 15% net after the election as well. Now, this is only a change in sentiment. The real economy has not changed yet. There are serious problems in the real economy. But the financial economy, the stock market, generally gives a preview, an indication, a reliable forecast, good judgment that these turnarounds will take place. For example, the government has 2 lakh crores of pending infrastructure projects, roads, power, ports, and so on. And if some of the newspapers are talking about a 45-day program, the US President has a 100-day program. We also should have a 100-day plan, but some of these things can be done within 45 days if there is a will and competence and no corruption in the various ministries. So there can be a huge stimulus to the economy. We've already had 2 stimulus packages, which are much smaller than the American and the Chinese. Fortunately for us, the other variable which affects the economy every year in terms of the outlook for the future, rain. This year again, the meteorology forecast is generally positive. There will be a 90% plus rainfall. The question still remains on how even that rainfall will be over various regions of the country, especially with respect to the agricultural crops of wheat and rice. But there also we have a huge wheat mountain now, Under normal conditions, the Indian economy can withstand even 2 successive bad monsoons, and they are very unlikely. The probability is of bad monsoon once in 7 years. I think the prospects for India have gone up significantly because of the positive mandate in the elections, which is totally unexpected. You will remember that before the election results came, the previous 2 months, the whole country was debating, both in press and TV, and of course in private parties and gatherings, 3 possibilities first, and then a 4th possibility. The country was becoming quite comfortable. Since the time of Vajpayee and his leadership and his ability to manage the coalition dharma, the country had become comfortable, not anymore calling for a difficult 2-party system. The country was getting comfortable with a 2-coalition system, either the UPA coalition or the NDA. There will be no basic changes in the economic policy, some variations about welfare state expenditure, and in fact the NDA was also learning from the Congress experience of the need to look after the Aam Aadmi, and if they had come to power, they would have also balanced the privatization and other kinds of market-oriented initiatives with the rural development and social welfare. But there was the talk of the 3rd front, and even a 4th front within that 3rd front, and therefore there is deep pessimism in the country as a whole, in international financial institutions, the foreign institutional investors, and we are very fortunate that this cloud has cleared. This is still not a guarantee. It depends upon the unity of the Congress party and their allies, from 201 seats to 272 plus. They're managing the affairs in Rajya Sabha, where they still don't have a majority. But if these things can be handled with goodwill on all sides, the Indian economy should be recovering well. Even a conservative foreign bank like Barclays have just made a forecast that in the second half of this fiscal year, that is October 09 to March 2010, the Indian economy will start growing at 7% rate per annum. The first half may be lower, the second half will establish 7, which means that the following year, 2010-11, we will go towards 8% and eventually capture that 9% plus trajectory where we were before this crisis hit us. Let me now come to the post-crisis era, what it would look like. The first and most fortunate and strong corporations are those which have continuing managers. So for example, in India, those companies which are engaged in FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods sector, are relatively less affected by this whole crisis, and they have faced the problem. Of course, naturally, there is a decline in growth rate. The industrial production index